Hi everyone, this is Val. The other day, we got a huge update on Elden Ring, including plenty of information about its online. I won't be spoiling anything major, but I wanted to address one specific change. We're no longer able to invade solo hosts. It's a bit like Bloodborne, and this approach makes some sense, right? If invasions are meant to balance out co-op, surely you should only be able to invade worlds engaged in co-op. Looking over the online responses, I see 4 basic camps. On the pro side, you have solo hosts who don't like being invaded, and you have invaders who prefer to fight groups instead of solo players. On the con side, you have solo hosts who want invaders, and you have invaders who want to fight solo players, even if it's a one-sided invasion. As much as I see both sides of the argument, I'm against this change, but for very specific reasons. I'm not just making this video to argue my point, I'm also making it because the people in my camp aren't making the right points. And if Fromsoft truly is listening to community feedback, as they claim, then it's important to explain ourselves thoroughly. If you find yourself agreeing with me, then please feel free to share this wherever you see fit. It's now or never, folks. Souls players need to understand their history. Since the original Demon Souls in 2009, offline play was the best option for solo players who only want to experience the PvE. Playing online was essentially opting into a dynamic difficulty mode. On one side, hosts could get help from co-op partners, and on the other side, invaders could join to make the game challenging for those groups. It was such an innovative concept. The problem was that the shabby netcode in the older games made it hard to find co-op, and that leaves solo players open to invasions with little chance of finding backup. So Dark Souls 2 and 3 innovated on this design by creating the Way of the Blue Covenant. Now, solo players can automatically get help from blue phantoms when invaded. This is an extremely reliable method to get help to solo players, while still keeping them involved in the online ecosystem of reds, blues, and co-opers. This is my argument. The Way of Blue is the single most significant improvement to the Soulsborne Online since it began. It helps new players progress with confidence, it fuels the online, and it keeps the community engaged for years. And this has always been From Software's vision since the original Demon Souls. Invaders and co-opers playing a tug of war, with Reds enjoying the challenge of fighting multiple players. The Way of Blue was just the best means of accomplishing that. So of course Elden Ring invasions should focus on fighting groups. They should design a countermeasure to prevent those unfortunate 1v1s. And it already exists, it's called the Way of Blue. It's the single biggest reason you still get multi-man fights in Dark Souls 3. Solo hosts are almost never solo for long. Even now, almost 6 years later, at least half of my invasions below meta are solo hosts using the Way of Blue. All of those potential 1v1s quickly turn into 2 or 3v1s. It's responsive as hell. That's a system working as intended. But if Fromsoft prevented you from invading solo hosts, every single one of those multi-man invasions would never have happened. That's cutting out half the potential invasion pool, maybe even more as the game ages. Really take a second and think about how much that would hurt the game's longevity. It's not just a poor decision. It's a poor decision that people aren't criticizing convincingly. I've seen countless people with good intentions cheering for this change. I was even tempted to agree with them. But most of these takes don't address the full magnitude of the problem. The importance of activity gets underplayed with talk of protecting solo hosts or stopping the scourge of bonfire duelists. Here's the ugly truth. If you cut solo hosts from the pool, you slash the game's longevity, full stop. The PvP we enjoy so much is all part of a delicate ecosystem. Over time, fewer new players means longer waits for co-opers, so they lose interest. Fewer co-opers means less co-op for hosts, less activity for reds, and in turn, less activity for blues. And that's just the in-game activity. Less engagement even impacts the social side of these games. Content creation, streaming, online conversation. Whether you prefer Reddit, Discord, Twitch, or YouTube, all of them will be hit hard if activity slows down. And less content creation means less advertising for the game, fewer new players, fewer people booting up the game to play with streamers or starting a new build because they saw a new Dang It JM video making the rounds. It might take a year, or 2 years, or 5. But if activity slows, it forms a feedback loop that worsens itself. We saw it happen with every one of the Soulsborne games, particularly with Bloodborne, Dark Souls Remastered, and Demon's Souls Remake. Even if you try a band-aid solution like adding a dried finger item for solo hosts, that only enables the bonfire duelists. So, if you support this change by Fromsoft, I ask you one question. What problems does this change actually solve that the current system doesn't? If people want a solo experience, offline mode exists. If people want help against invaders, they have co-op and the Way of Blue. Fromsoft could still make a few well-needed adjustments, like addressing issues of twinking, but this change would be a wrench in the works in more ways than one. I really don't mean to sound negative. Honestly, I'd love to see the community prove me wrong and produce a thriving online scene for Elden Ring. You guys know how much I strive to be optimistic and enjoy the best parts of these games, but honestly, the real salt in my wound is there seems to be only one other person critiquing this change in the right way, and that's the YouTuber Raven of Ash. He's always produced well-reasoned analysis of the PvP in these games, and his take on Elden Ring is a really welcome one. Check his links down below. If you don't follow him, you are doing yourself a disservice. Because the rest of the dissenters do not paint our community in a good light. Surprise, surprise, the biggest voices are mostly whining about Gank Souls 3. These people have literally become their own strawmen. They could not represent invaders more poorly if they tried. I don't want them in my camp. As it turns out, being on the right side for the wrong reasons only makes the right side look wrong. Dark Souls 3 has had an active lifespan for almost 6 years now, and above all else, that speaks to the strengths of its systems. Where DS3 saw a balance problem, it sought to fix it through its online. It doubled the Blue Covenants, it allowed summons of any soul level, and it gave hosts health advantages so they could survive long enough to get help. But it also gave invaders additional Estus rewards for overcoming multiples. That's the kind of smart, age-proof design that made this series successful, and it's what we need for Elden Ring to reach true longevity. The Way of Blue is practically perfect. They could tweak it a bit, maybe auto-equip it for new players, but the structure is sound. See, here's the thing. I love Demon's Souls PvP. It's fast, frenetic, it's just a great time. But everything about the remake, balancing, matchmaking, you name it, ruined its chances at becoming an immortal classic. Bluepoint and Sony showed us that ruining a game's longevity only takes a couple bad decisions, like splitting players across too many servers. We like to think of Soulsborne games as immortal, but they're no stranger to questionable design decisions. And there are plenty of issues we want to see solved in Elden Ring. But the last thing I'd want is for Fromsoft to break or remove one of the best features in the series. When we have something this functional already, we have to remind them, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thanks for watching.